I wanted to talk a little bit about why I art journal, why I think people should art journal, and how I art journal, I guess. And I'm going to do a demonstration in my book, in my journal. Uh, and I have my favorite paints and some brushes and my water. And I have this fun little scrap basket. So maybe we'll use some scrap. This is my 8x8 Dilutions journal that, these journals are the best. They have this little pocket in the front. And I like that they have this spine. These basically lay flat. And this is why I like them. So I can open them up and it's pretty flat. Now I have done this page with some gesso so it will be dry for us. And then I have this deli sheet. Let me make sure that you can see this pretty good. I have this deli sheet in here just so that paint doesn't go over the edges and stick my book together. So that's basically what I'm trying to avoid. I brought with me some brushes. I just picked some random brushes that I don't know what I might want or might not want. And then my Stabilo All pencils. These are my 3 favorite Stabilo colors. Actually, I like the green one too, but I have black, red, and blue. I wasn't really sure where I was going to start or, this is so random for me. So it doesn't matter what you pick. I like these because when you get them wet, they run. And I like to start out with some random marks and to kind of let things just run. So without thinking too much about what I'm doing, I like to start that way. Now, sometimes we can just take a brush and I wet my brush just a little bit. I have a cloth here that I do wipe off on so it's not too wet. And I just start getting the marks to run a little bit. I'm not looking for anything in particular. I'm just letting it happen. Now, to me, this is a de-stress moment. So, okay, let's take a breath and think about this for a minute. It's really a great way to de-stress unless you're all anxious about what you put on your page. Now, I don't want anybody to be anxious about what they put on their page because we can fix anything, even if you don't like it. No matter how much you don't like it, you can cover anything up. These particular pages, when I make these, I do it I keep in mind that I'm going to layer these pages. Sometimes I don't, but sometimes I do. So I just kind of go intuitively. We're going to call it intuitive because I've got no other explanation. Now, I brought these colors with me. You all know I love my Martha paint, so I have my Party Streamer. Again, I don't know if they're still making this paint or not. I'm having a hard time finding it, so I'm going to say it's getting harder to find. I love it because it lasts, it doesn't separate ever, and there's really, I get it right to almost empty before it gets junky in the bottles. So I brought along that because one of my pages wouldn't be my pages without some pink on it. This is called Pool, and I just happen to love this as kind of a tealy blue. This one is called Summer Haze, which is a very light kind of sky blue, maybe I would call it. And this one is quite dark. It's called Indigo. It's a little bit brighter than what I would consider an indigo, but so I brought a light, dark, medium there because if you want to get started in a page, it's kind of a good idea to have colors that go together. It helps you not make mud on your page if you're worried about that. And in these colors, I have this lighter green, which is more of they call it Granny Smith, which I really love. And then this one is green olive. They kind of mix well together. So I wasn't really sure where I felt like I was going to go today. So that was my point to telling you all that. So I start with these marks on my page. You can certainly make a lot more marks. You don't have to make just those marks. You do you and have fun with paint. Okay, so I'm just going to pick this little light blue color. And I'm going to kind of color in a little section here. Sometimes I make my paint watery. Sometimes I just don't. Now, the thing about the Stabilo All pencils is they're going to run until they dry with some paint on them, and then they won't run anymore, or you can even seal it with something. So I try to keep the covers on my paints because I don't want them to dry out. And then sometimes you notice this running paint in my work, and then sometimes you don't. Just depends on the mood and what I'm going to do. And what I didn't bring was any white with me. So again, on my lap, I have a bit of a old junky towel that I rinse my brush off in the water, and then I run it on I dry it a little bit on the towel just to make sure. Now I'm kind of just going with it. I have no plan here, really. But I like to get my brush wet because I like this thinning sort of line here. Again, I did treat my pages with some gesso, and I don't always do that. These pages are quite vanilla, if I turn this page, if you can see this. They're quite yellowy, not white. And sometimes, depending on the colors I decide to choose, I want them to be more white, and that's why I use the gesso. These pages don't need any prep, really. These are good cardstock or Bristol paper. So sometimes I just leave them like they are and don't worry about it. Now you can see this runs. I'm not worried. You can see I've got like a bit of a piece of paint hanging up there. I just use this under paper. It's deli paper. I just use that to rub my brush off on. This becomes becomes good journal fodder much later. So this all just depends on how I'm feeling at the moment and what I choose to put on my paper. I'm going to go with a bit of a darker color. So you could see, I could see some depth happening here. That's sort of what I was hoping for. Now, a lot of times I'll have white with me, black with me, color-wise. Sometimes I take some white and just go right over the page just to lighten it up a little bit. It just depends on what's going on. Now, I'm interested in doing something with this above part. So I think I'm going to I'm going to wet my brush so that it's good and wet. This is a very bright color. So this really gets out of hand quickly. How about if I say that? So I'll work sometimes just right out of the cap, as you can see. But I'll add a lot of water here if I want to add color. Now, if I don't like the way something's going, I have some baby wipes over here. And sometimes I'll pick this up and I'll just wipe it back a little bit. And the baby wipe sometimes gives you options. So this Granny Smith apple, or whatever they call this, Granny Smith, It's quite bright, but you could see with a little water, it really is much more tolerable than if I did like this up here. Let's see. This gets really bright. I guess that's just as bright. This makes it a little more sheer, I would say. Now, this is just a background. You could keep layering. It depends on how far we get today. We might not get to finish a whole painting, or we might. You never know. So I'm just going to do this here. And this is where a little water goes a long way, because just thinning that down a little bit makes it a little more sheer. I like it better this way. I might want to wipe some of this up a little bit. I don't like the perfect line. Add a little water to that. Now I'm going to get a little, well, I was going to say I was going to get a little white and then a little white, but I think I'm going to smear this with this baby wipe. So you can paint with a baby wipe. And I kind of like this effect, right? It's grungy, not perfect. And there. And I might leave this to dry now. I like to scratch into some of this sometimes. I like to make a mess, basically. So again, the stress-free part of it is not worrying about it being perfect. Let's pretend we're not all social media mavens. These things are for us. And that's what makes them fun to do. If you're not trying to be perfect and not trying to be, um, uh, you know, some, master artists or anything, um, that's when they work the best to me. So I'm no trained artist. I don't have that kind of background. I'm okay with that. Um, I just like to come in here. So this is my silent space where I get to do what I want to do in my journal without any judgments, just letting it go. Now, some people might freak out about this black line here. No, this is what I love, this kind of painting. So I brought along some of these. These are pieces of papers that I've already made. I just wanted to see if maybe some of these would work. These are basically just shreds of paper. So when I put these in, I like to use some gel matte medium. I like matte so that it doesn't make my pages all shiny and sticky. I don't like them to stick together. So I have a lot of choices here. I kind of saw this and this really attracted my eye. I really like this also. So I might, I don't know. I love this though. I might have to definitely use this one here. And I like it torn. I think the torn edge is attractive. It's a lot of things. but I love it torn. So maybe I'll start with these. Something about this one that I really liked a lot. This oval is something I love, and these black dots. So I think I'm going to put this up here. Now I could come back in with some white to anchor some of these pieces. I could use like a space like this to write my feelings for the day, or a mantra, or something else that I maybe felt drawn to write. So I'm going to just take this. This is my gel matte medium. This one happens to be Liquitex. I know there's a bunch of them. So I'm sorry, this is matte medium, fluid matte medium. I'm in the habit of saying gel because I think a lot of people call it gel medium. And I just am getting a little bit of a plate here that I can pour my matte medium in and use that. Now, a lot of times I use something like this. So this is a Catalyst silicone kind of spatula, I would call it, I guess. So I'm going to put, it doesn't matter if this gets all over your page, because honestly, it dries matte. You don't really have to worry about that. Now, I happen to know, and I happen to remember when I made these pages here. So if I put the matte medium over top, it's going to run, because I know that this wasn't permanent. But I'm not going to worry about it. You can see it running here. I'm going to let this happen. I'm just going to make sure that it's sort of pushed down in my journal. And it is creating a bit of a mess, but I'm calling that my art. So sometimes I'll do this. Sometimes I just put it on the bottom, underneath rather. Depends on how much I want to get in there. I like the bird. Now I can't unsee that. So I love that. And I pick up some of the medium as I'm going over it. I'll wipe some up and rub it on my towel. Now this I can see is rippling a little bit. That happens. Nothing you can do about it. It's part of the beauty of what you do, and part of what it makes it beautiful, I think, is this texture that happens. Now, I liked this, and I wanted this to be up on the top of the page like this. So usually I start, and by the time I get started and get things going, if I was feeling stressed from my day, I've started to forget about it already. And that's the beauty of art journaling. It really is. Now you can see this is running a little bit. I'm going to pull out some other things in a little bit. Definitely some white here. Now, if this bothers you too much, sometimes you can take a rag and push on the ripples. You have to be careful. This is a thin piece of deli sheet here that I have here. You don't want to rip the page, but I'll push out any of those ripples if I can get some of them out. Just so it's not bubbling underneath, so it lasts. You know, it secures, it attaches to the paper, because that's really what you're looking for. And I take my baby wipe and kind of wipe some of that up. Now, when my nails are long, I get paint and everything else underneath them. Oh, well, what can I do? And I have, you know, a Q-tip here. Now I wanted to let this get a little drier. I didn't bring my dryer on purpose because it makes a lot of noise. I didn't think anybody would want to hear that. Oh, I'm seeing that my hair is getting in that. Sorry about those hair shots. I want to add something in here, and I'm not sure really what. So let me grab. So I have some, these are, that could work. These are stickers that I had made a long time ago. Maybe those. So sometimes if I want to soften edges, I just pick up some white paint on my fingers. And I paint with my fingers. Because what is better than that? The other thing I do is I use my roller sometimes and roll and create a mess with that. My brayer, I should say. And I might, again, sort of to soften some edges or anchor some edges. All right, let's see. What ones did I like? So I made these stickers. A while ago. Let's try, I have some Neo Color 2 Caran d'Ache crayons here. So I could do something like this. Oh, actually, you know what? I know what I want. I want this bluish color. Now I put my hand in that paint, which isn't all that great of an idea, but I did it. So I loved that right there, this oval. So maybe I'm going to look for a pink here. To see if I can bring out this oval a little bit. When I look on the camera, oh, my head is in the way. When I look on the camera, I want something more in there. Now, the Caran d'Ache crayons are water soluble. Again, if we get a little carried away, we can wipe that off a little bit. And that's that. A bear claw. I love that. I feel like this really needs something. This is a big piece of something there. So let's look for some other, something to balance all that. It's probably too big. I just feel like that needs something. So maybe something like that. Now I'm just pushing that down. These are, not that crazy about that, but you know, we can't love everything we do, right? So I'm going to go with a little and sometimes when you're not so precious about this, it gets better. So I am going to pull out my brayer and I am going to put a little white paint on here. Now this particular brayer has been falling apart on me, but we're going to try it today. And sometimes that just brings things back for me. That little bit of white paint over something where it still peeks through. I'm sort of spreading the colors. And I like when that happens. It falls into those bumpy parts, as we said before. Now you can keep your, you know, if you want more to shine through, you can keep your baby wipe with you and selectively kind of pull more out. So not so much disappears. You guys, you know what I'm finding out? I need to stand. I can see better. My head isn't getting in the way. And I can always bring back more of what's underneath. If I want to, I can get more paint. And you can see my brayer fell apart again. I think I have to retire the brayer. I think that particular brayer, that was a message, right, for me to stop. That's how I look at that. These are Stabilo Woodies. These are actually a children's art supply, or considered a children's art supply. Again, these are water soluble. This is why they smudged here like this. I really like that. So maybe I want to give it a little more definition. Maybe the idea is the image is sort of a flower, like not really outwardly. And you could see I have the baby wipe in my hand. And these woodies just, oh, maybe I want to bring that back in because I kind of liked what was there. Without letting it be too on purpose. More just a suggestion. So then this makes me want to do one of these. And I don't know. This is my Caran d'Ache again. This is that olive color. It just seemed to be the right thing. I still don't know what that is, but I'm going to leave it. I don't hate it. This is a little bright. But I might just let this dry now. So if I were working by myself and not worried about, I am separating the pages, by the way. I do this so that the page underneath isn't too stuck to that. So if I were working by myself, I would walk away from this at this point and I would kind of just leave it and then come back and see how I feel. What do I want to do to it? I may never add another thing to it. I might come back and be like, you know what? I need to add a lot more color. I need to add other colors. I want other things going on in there. This, of course, is, I'm just kind of with that. But here's suddenly what I had thought of. That one doesn't want to work too well. Let's bring in some paint and let me take this back with a little bit of white paint. Maybe just one side. So I feel like I'm overworking it now. So I'm just going to leave it and let it go. Because tomorrow I could come look at it and I could have the idea of the century that could make it look perfectly beautiful. I'm going to leave it and I'm going to let it dry. So that's my page for now for today. This is often how I work. You know, I could walk away from here a lot of times and really not be happy with it. And then I come back the next day and I think, oh, that's great once it dries. Or, oh, I want to add something else to it. Or something totally different will inspire me. And I want to do something totally different. Here's true artist hands. Not too much color, but a little bit. And what is it that I want to do with the rest of that page? But for now, even if I spent 10 minutes on this page, usually I find my breathing has slowed. I'm feeling as though I'm in a much different place than I had been before. This is what art does for me. And I hope this is what art does for you. If you have questions or comments, now's the time. Every day is a different day and a different painting, right, Sandy? I absolutely agree. It's it definitely is a different set of eyes when you come into to look at your painting, when you come into your workroom, your studio, whatever you have. Thank you, Donna. Donna said she loves how I use color. And color to me is important. I'm not a neutral girl. I'm not neutral. I'm black and white, and I'm very colorful. So I like black and white for the contrast, and I love color. So I use a ton of color all the time, pretty much. And this is pretty much why I love those Martha Stewart paints, right? Because they're very opaque. So I have a lot of golden colors. Golden is a more pricey paint, I would say. I have a lot of those golden colors, but they're very sheer. A lot of them are pretty sheer. And I tend to like those craft paints better because you can't always see through them. So I kind of like that contrast. But also, if you have those acrylics that or those craft paints that are not that are very opaque, mix them with water. They take a beating, those paints. So mix them with water. You can make them as sheer as you like. You can do all kinds of things with them. So I feel that a paint like a craft paint is much more versatile. So these Martha Stewart paints, I've had these forever. So, I mean, these go a long way in your painting and journaling. Now, I don't just paint anymore. Not that I ever did just paint. So I'm using a lot of different supplies. I consider myself mixed media more than anything else at this point. So I'm using a lot of different mediums. I use the Caran d'Ache water-soluble crayons. That's what these are. They also make crayons that are not water-soluble. I use these woody pencils by Stabilo, which is similar to the Stabilo All. These get wet and they run. So these are fun to play with. And because if you put white paint over them, it runs into the white paint, so it sort of tints your paint. So these are fun ways to play and experiment. That's what I find. So your journal is for your experimentation. That's all it's for. And I mean, I'm not doing big paintings. I don't do big paintings. Sometimes I decide to use a piece of paper and do something. But for the most part, I'm not doing big paintings. So do all of colors wash off your hands easily? Yep, I use soft soap, and soft soap pretty much takes everything off. The only caveat is if you're using those more expensive paints that have a lot of pigment to them, the blue color does not easily wash off your hands. I also use a cream that's it's a glove, I can't remember what it's called, but I use a cream, so it's liquid glove, I guess. It helps them come off much easier, and it's better for your hands because that paint then doesn't soak in, which there's questions about whether it's they could be toxic. So the blue is one of those that I think is questionable, but they do wash off my hands. I use soft soap and I use that liquid glove often. Sometimes I forget, but that's because I'm human. So, I'm going to do this every single Wednesday. We're going to go live every Wednesday. Next week, we're going to work on a set of cards. And I'm going to use 3x5 index cards. I will explain more about that when I do it. But I have for many years, I think I've been doing it for 10 years, done every summer. A woman named Tammy Garcia does index card a day for 2 months. So she does it June and July. And you do a mini piece of art on a 3x5 card. It's my favorite thing kind of to do. And those cards have become strategic in my life. When I need a quick little art, little bit of art, or I'm traveling or whatever, I bring those cards with me and I work for them. So I'm going to talk about doing our own motivation cards, so to speak. So I'm going to make a set of cards and I'm going to show you how. And we're going to take those and make them our motivation cards. So we can go to work and maybe they'll be our prompt. If we go to do art, they could be our art prompts or ideas that we could work from or things like that. So that's what we're going to work on next week. So sometimes I do big sheets of paper and I cut them up into 3x5 cards. Next week, I think what we're going to do is I'm going to tape them together loosely and paint them all kind of similar, and then do individual ones from that main page. So that's what I'm going to show you next week. So thank you everybody for showing up. I really appreciate your support and the fact that you come.